Alrighty then, welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. Get things started. My name is CleverTwist online. You've probably never heard of me, so in advance I do apologize. And to get one thing out of the way, I am not MictheMicrophone, although I do play one on TV. All right, so this is my What in Equestria Am I Reading fanfiction panel. The main goal for this panel was to demonstrate a lot of what the major fandom thinks about fanfiction, and that it is an embarrassing mess that other people look down on. So I am going to enforce that idea by reading out a few selections that I have picked from the fandom within the past few years of my enthusiasm for writing and reading and everything about that, and kind of display them for you guys today. A quick word of advice for those of you who are in the room. This is a disclaimer. There is going to be foul language in some of these. Here or there is nothing too graphic, nothing sexually explicit, and no gore or major violence, although there are going to be some suggestive themes. But for the most part, this is all just going to be one big embarrassing mess. So, without further ado, let's start things off with a little piece that I like to call Princess Celestia Has Gonorrhea. Ahem. Alrighty. With the day court having wrapped up with the last of the petitioners, Princess Celestia made her way up to her bedchambers in an effort to unwind after the events of the day. Another crisis in Ponyville, this time due to an infestation of owl bears. The pesky creatures had been camping in the various attics around the village, keeping its citizens up late with echoes of growling hoots through their homes. In Manhattan, the homeless roamed the streets in growing numbers as they begged to various passers-by in a low, droning monotone for change. In the Crystal Empire, a group of renegade changelings were lined up outside the Crystal Palace, with a picket line demanding equal rights for a living in a place where love was overflowing like water. It was one of those days. Celestia walked up to two guards standing by her bedroom, giving to the two gentle stallions a friendly nod, which they gave a slight bow in return. Opening her door with her magic, she went inside and shut the door behind her before she finally stretched like a cat in a manner undignified for a princess. She went over to her favorite pillow in front of the fireplace and plopped down on it. Her hooves reached up to massage her temples. This is one of the weirdest days so far, which was saying something in her near several millenniums of living. That included the best-forgotten green tea war of 134 AB, after banishment. Celestia magicked up a warm pot of oolong tea, along with a cup of water and a saucer. She didn't care that Griffin King was incest one time. Oolong was better than green tea. At least it's over. This day just can't get any worse. As fate itself gave a smirk at those words uttered from the solar princess, there was a knock on the door. Celestia immediately lowered the cup and raised her head to look presentable with her visage motherly smile. Enter. The door opened to reveal a magenta-colored Pegasus stallion with a tied-up green mane. Fineheart, Dr. Fine to his colleagues, and one of the senior residents to the palace infirmary, shuffled into the room and closed the door behind him. The Pegasus was obviously nervous, which was a par for the course with the immortal goddess. Fine still had his white lab coat on with his embroidered name and a pair of saddlebags over his back. He stopped to adjust his glasses a dozen feet away from Celestia and tried to give her a welcoming smile, which came off as good as one of Twilight's when she had one of her episodes. Greetings, Your Highness. Good evening to you as well, Fineheart. Fineheart turned his head to rustle a clipboard from his saddlebags, holding it up with his hoof while using his wing feathers to flip the pages over. Fine stuttered at first. I have to thank you so much for donating some of your blood to be studied for the betterment of science. It was an honor to look at it so closely and study your cells. It looks like an ordinary pony's at first, but the differences are remarkable, and there are things that even I'm unsure of what they are. Dr. Howard and I have been poring over every last test that we've been conducting, and I'd like to share some of the results with you. Dr. Fine was excited. I apologize, I seem to have lost my place. A warm smile greeted him when he looked up from his clipboard. I'm glad to help you. Is there anything significant that you wanted to tell me about your findings? Dr. Fine's eyes shifted away as he pretended to be busy with the papers. Well, Princess Celestia, there's a lot. I mean, first, your white blood cell count is very high for a pony of your size. I'm not sure that it be considered normal, since I had to test the other princesses, but it does correlate that you hardly or ever get sick. Celestia nodded patiently, taking this moment to pour herself another cup of tea while he continued rambling off interesting factoids for a bit. She wasn't up to snuff on her medical knowledge like he was, but at least the results were good. He suddenly stopped, reaching to adjust his glasses with a nervous gesture. And, Princess, if you don't mind me asking, and this is the strictest confidence as a medical professional, have you experienced anything weird? Like, oh boy. Vaginal discharge? Celestia had stopped the cup of tea that was raised to her lips, blinking for a moment as she stared at the stallion. Lowering the cup, she shook her head. No, I haven't experienced anything like that. Why? Is it bad? No. His hoof waved in front of him with a frantic state. I mean, it's not totally serious. Just, you might have a slight illness that is totally curable with some drugs. Celestia gave a slow nod before raising the cup of tea to her lips to give some warm, delicious oolong tea. You've got gonorrhea. And the delicious tea was immediately on her dresser. Celestia gagged and coughed for a moment as she tried to clear her windpipe of the herbal juice. What? Gonorrhea? The two stallion guards outside flicked their ears and turned their heads to look at each other in confusion before going back to their stoic pose. It was best to never question some things. Dr. Fine's hooves were in his ears, wincing from having accidentally exposed to the traditional royal Canterlot voice from a close proximity. He rubbed his ears as a high-pitched ringing sound echoed from within his eardrums before training them on Celestia. The princess was stunned. She didn't know how much of the modern medical practices and how much of them had advanced within the last 20 to 50 years, but she did know that one ancient word was. Her jaw tried to work as she had forced herself speechless for the first time in decades. Dr. Fine waited patiently, hoping he wouldn't have turned the cider from a solar flare, sent to Tartarus, or be sent to the moon. What? How? Swallowing hard, Dr. Fine blushed slightly as he tried to say the next thing. The last of his foalhood died after he had found out that the virgin, wise, all-knowing god he was employed in had something irresponsible young ponies got after a night of lollygagging. He read the results himself, tested and retested the samples till he was sure that there was no way he was wrong. Have you been having intimate relations with a stallion? Or mare recently? Celestia shook her head. When was the last time she had sex? Did she... Did she ever have sex? It was... Wait. It was starting to come back to her. 527 BB, before banishment. Celestia downed her 6th bottle of moonshine, one of Luna's private brew she had kept in one of the hidden rooms of the Everfree Palace. She slammed the ceramic jug on the wooden table, smashing the bottle into thick pieces with her abnormal strength. She was flushed with drink as her pink mane bounced around her face, beaming with a wide grin as she had raised her hooves and set loose the voice. Tonight, the Minotaurs be swimming within the dredges of Cerberus's night soil. The dinner hall erupted with cheers. Weary soldiers, out of their heavy metal armor, whistled and raised their own mugs in victory. The battle was a territory dispute that had snowballed into a full-scale war between the equines and minotaurs. While the newly crowned princesses didn't have full magic might they would later have, several hundred years of life made their minds sharp, if a little reckless in their newfound might. Lots of ponies were out drinking, singing, and dancing was heard amongst them, among the earth ponies and pegasi, while the unicorns played their woodwind instruments. Plenty of food was prepared for their victory among their subjects. Mushrooms, apples, cranberries, and even those wonderful little things from the southern Minotaur tribe called bananas. Every pony was having a wonderful time as the evening wore on. Celestia would soon find herself in the company of some very cute stallions. She let them rub up against her flanks with her new sun mark, nibbling a stallion's ear, having one lick her neck. Her wings would enfold too as she took them towards her bedchamber. It was wild, hot, passionate, right up until she had to raise the sun. Dr. Fine bit his lip while he waited for Celestia to speak again and about what she had and how she would begin her treatment. She would have to make an appointment to discreetly come down to the medical ward in the castle so he could jab a painfully large needle deep into her flank. It would be the first part of the treatment. Celestia's head was buried in her hooves, groaning as she had felt a headache starting flaring up. Meanwhile, Fate was cackling like a mad pony that had just seen the final layer or Tartarus and the final layer of Tartarus and the void beyond. It was too priceless to have something come back and bite her in the flank for being a brat all those years ago. Oh, me. I would highly advise against that. The end. And people wonder why we are a weird group. Alrighty. So the next story we have up is a personal favorite of mine and actually written by a close friend of mine within the fan fiction writing community. He goes by the name of Raven's Dagger. If you guys look him up online, he has a lot of very good stories. This one was written within a single night and was written on a dare. He was dared to write the closest thing to a clopfic he could write without making it clop fiction. And what we have is one of the most hilarious troll fics I think I have read in a very long time. It is called Of Hanging Shelves. It was summertime in Equestria, and the scorching rays of the sun fell upon the land. No pony could be seen outside, for every pony was taking refuge within their houses and trying to beat the heat. The Apple family had decided to take the day's rest from farming and rest inside their home. Fluttershy was taking care of her pets, trying to keep them cool. Rarity was in her bedroom, making a few dresses. Pinkie Pie was baking some of her world-renowned cupcakes in cold blue frosting, so as to try to forget the heat. The Cutie Mark Crusaders were there with Sakura, so as to get under the shade of the trees and see what new strange concoction she had just brewed. Even Rainbow Dash could be not seen outside. She was taking refuge within a cloud, or the cold, forlorn cloud. This was what other ponies were doing with their spare time, yet one particular pony should be noted above all the others. This pony's name was Twilight Sparkle. In Twilight's house, a slight slamming could be heard from outside. Inside, one could see the shaking body of Twilight trying ever so violently to push her new toy. Twilight was standing on her forehooves and slamming her entire body into the wall, where her newest distraction happened to be. "Come on," she cried. "Get in there." With a deep groan, Twilight Sparkle leaned forward, putting all of her weight into hammering the object of her affection. Tilting her head back as she had pressed further in, she would give it her best and let any pony be damned if they had mocked her physical ability. Her hips bucked as she grinded herself upon the object. Huffing, she had pulled back before nailing it again. Horn glowing as she grasped the handle. Her breathing began to quicken with each thrust she had placed upon the object. With a forehoof, she had wiped her brow. Her friends were right. This was much harder than she had thought. Maybe it was to be expected for her first time. She moved with a swaying motion so as not to make it lose its place where she wanted it to be. Sweat began to pour down her back, itching along the edges of her lavender flanks and glistening in the morning rays. She paid no heed to it as she had given another deep blow. Finally, it went all the way in. threatening to break the hard wood that was on it. Her throat was becoming dry and sore. She could really use some juice, and she was going to get some sooner rather than later. The faster she finished this off, the faster she would get some. She groaned on just thinking of all the juice in her mouth, and tried with all of her might to end the task at hoof. Pressing forward on the object once more, she felt it give in to her. She smiled with satisfaction, knowing that she knew what it felt like. It would be so much easier to end the job. She positioned herself so that she could pound harder on the object and finish up. The object creaked a bit from the weight, yet she knew it paid no mind to it. Standing, she carefully aimed down upon the pair of pink lips, sticking out her tongue in concentration. One last hard blow before it was over, she knew. Best to end it now. With one last moan, she swung her entire body forward, rushing to end it. With a loud and shattering bang, accompanied with a howl of pain, Twilight finished. Her heart raced, and she had felt blood rush inside her. She looked down to see that she had cut her hoof a bit and moaned in slight pain, mixed with ecstasy of relief. Panting, she had let herself fall backwards into the library's cool floor, where she lay in a while nursing her forehoof. Tears stung the edges of her eyes until finally, with a sigh, the pain left. The cut still throbbed, yet she reminded herself it would be a good reminder on what she had just done for a time. Just then, Twilight heard the voice of her assistant. "Twilight?" asked Spike from the room over, his voice muffled by the thick door. "Are you okay?" Twilight, getting on her hoofs, had placed herself between the entrance and her little pet project. It would be more than just a little bit embarrassing if he had seen this. "I'm fine, Spike," she had said with a slight warble. "No need to come in here." She cringed as she had heard the pritter-pattle of his little clawed feet. No, not yet," she squealed as she had ran forward towards the entrance. Just as she was within range of the door, it swung open, revealing her number one assistant wearing an apron and carrying a tray with 2 long cups and a pitcher filled with juice and tinkling pieces of ice. "I heard all sorts of weird banging and screaming in here, and so I thought maybe you Spike froze in mid-sentence. As he looked at her hoof, his eyes widened considerably. "Twilight, are you okay?" Tears glistened the corners of her eyes. "I know, I messed it up, didn't I? Oh, I knew I should have asked for help, or at least consult a few more manuals. Mr. Inky at the hardware store gave me a tip, but..." She caressed her injured hoof, which scratched slightly and stinged from the sweat. Spike, upon seeing her distress, gently put down the tray and walked over to her and gave her a small, comforting hug. "Oh, Twilight, it's all right. We'll just bandage it up later, and it'll be fine. What were you doing to hurt yourself anyway? We have all these books here." He tried to look behind her, but she simply sidestepped, wincing as her hoof made contact with the ground. "Twilight, what are you hiding?" Spike gave her his most determined and stubborn look, until finally she relented and stepped aside. "I can explain," she said, cringing. Spike took a few steps towards the object. "It's a shelf, right?" "It's horrible, isn't it?" No, Spike said, trying to calm Twilight. "It's actually quite nice." Spike looked at the shelf. They were a few hoof-length taller than Twilight. At the top, a big engraved pair of lips gave the locker a good idea as what kind of books they were meant to hold. The actual shelves were a little crooked, and some of the nails were in haphazardly, but overall, it looked fairly sturdy. "I'm sure no pony is good at it their first time," he coughed and searched for words. "And it's a really nice shelf." "Really? You think so?" "Of course I do. And I'm sure Rarity would be real happy. She always loved those sap stories. Heck, you might even get the others, besides Applejack and Rainbow Dash, of course, to like it." Scooping up the little dragon in her hooves, Twilight gave him a firm hug. "Thanks, Spike. I needed that." She sat the slightly red Spike on the ground. "Now I noticed you had brought something to drink. How about we sit down and relax? It's so warm today, and I'm sweating all over." Spike sniffed lightly. "Yeah, I can smell that," he had muttered under his breath. "What was that, Spike?" asked Twilight while pouring the cold juice into the 2 cups using her magic. The dragon blushed and pretended to examine her dirty work. I, really like the lips? Oh, those, said Twilight as she floated one of the 2 cups filled over to Spike. She trotted over to the engraved lips that adorned the top of her new shelves. I had found that at the hardware store. I thought it would go well since it was going to be more for the more romantic section and such things like that. Oh, all right. Spike leaned in and inspected the very pink shelves while Twilight began experimenting with book placements, gingerly touching to one side as to see how it would immediately bend itself out of shape. It did, and Spike had to quickly push it back into place before Twilight saw. He coughed a bit and scooted towards the exit. Well, call me if you need a hoof, he said before shutting the door behind him with a light thump. Twilight let out a sigh before brushing away some of her hair that had stuck to her forehead. Whew, that could have led to some easily misunderstanding. She had looked to the bookshelf, which was slightly hanging to the left, and blushed with a light velvet blush. Oh yes, it could have been a terrible misunderstanding. So, everyone good and embarrassed yet? Because we got a lot more weirdness to get through. This one I decided to include mostly because of the title, but going through I skimmed the first few sentences and quite honestly I couldn't help but include this. The title of this story is My Stupid Story No Pony Wanna Read because it is about random stuff and I like PewDiePie, so bro fist, bro hoof, a high five, and butt hoof, people! As you could tell, this was written with the utmost of care. So we begin with chapter 1, the only chapter. Taco Bell's Pizza with Bombs. One day in Equestria, there was Twilight Sparkle sitting on a chair in Taco Bell, enjoying her spicy taco. Before she could take the last bite, Rainbow Dash crashed into the windows of it and landed in front of the table where Twilight was sitting. Oh, hi, Twily. You bookworm. Want to see me do a barrel roll? Twilight moaned and gave Rainbow Dash a dirty look. No, you little brat. No, don't you see I'm trying to enjoy my taco? Jeez, and look, every pony's looking at us. Thanks, Rainbow Crash. Then suddenly the store owner came and gave Rainbow Dash, Rainbow Pie and Twily Sprinkle a dirty and angry look. You little piece of toast bread, what do you think you're doing? This'll cost you 500 bells. Rainbow Dash looked confused. Bells? We're not playing Animal Crossing. Nerd! Suddenly, the owner of the Taco Bell, began to make a weird, unnatural sound. He began to transform. Holy mother of Zelda, the what's going on? Screamed Rainbow Dash or something and fell behind Rarity's ass because Rarity was forced to clean the Taco Bell floor. She couldn't pay her taxes, so that's the reason why she does all this shitty work. So anyway, Rainbow Cotton or something got scared and from the transforming taco dude owner, and she or he or something flew away. Not for long, though. Apparently, the owner transformed into a Pokemon, a fat Snorlax with wings, and body slammed Rainbow Textbook from his fat McDonald's belly, and Rainbow Tomato died from the impact. Meanwhile, Twily Beer flew away, and that fat Snorlax couldn't find her ever again. The end? Nope. Before that happened, George Washington Bush took an arrow to the knee. Meanwhile, Twily got home and looked tired. What the happened, Twily? You look like you were beaten up by some drug dealer nearby, said Spike while smoking some fresh pot cocaine. Spike, it is time for you to fell the fear. And then she grabbed a random toy bow and arrow and fired directly at Spike's knee. He then took an arrow to the knee. Because why not? Ha 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 ha, laughed Twilight Sankle in a Higurashi face. Then Spike said, yo dog, it's not nice and all, but what the is the matter with you? Twily then did a barrel roll for no reason and said, I play violent video games, that's why. Then for no reason, Justin Bieber came by and said, "Okay, baby, then let's have some..." He couldn't finish his sentence. He exploded of, I don't know, Zeus pissed off at his singing, so he let a lightning strike hit Justin Pingas for no reason. Meanwhile, in Cantor Litterbox or something, Princess Doodle did a backflip and on a playground and screamed, "Front flip," even though it was a backflip. Stupid princess. She was only there as a Statue of Liberty or something. Then, for no reason, Ronald McDonald came by on a motorcycle holding an RPG-7, and he fired directly at a Walmart store for... You know why, don't you? Well, he wanted to open a McDonald's store at a Walmart, but they didn't let him, so he blew Walmart up for that reason. So yeah, then Applejack had a 3DS and played Pokemon X on it. But then, suddenly, she found a rare, shiny Pokemon. Oh my god. Want to catch that one and name it Balls Kick for no reason? She threw a Master Ball. It got free somehow. And she threw her shiny-looking 3DS at the ground. She then took a nuclear warhead out of her pocket and threw it onto the 3DX, and exploded. The area was polluted from the chemical reaction, and Solid Snake committed suicide. Because he forgot to use the revival pill and never woke up. Meanwhile, in Ponyville, Twilight Spoinkle was playing Wii Fit on the Wii. When she wanted to try out the balance board, it broke into millions of pieces. Damn Nintendo, why does all of your stuff break so easily? Spike came into the room Twilight was in, and with his lit cigar in his mouth, he sat down next to Twilight, looking deeply into her eyes and said, "Twilight, there's something important I want to tell you. And I wanted to tell you the whole time, but I couldn't brace myself to tell you. Until now." The purple unicorn began to blush. She knew that one day he would confess his love to her. "Twilight, Her eyes began to wide out. Her cheeks began to blush even more. She was ready for this big news that will forever change his life. "Twilight, I am in love. I am in love with something purple in this room." She couldn't wait any longer for Spike to say her name. "It's me, isn't it, Spike?" Spike began to cry. He then started to laugh and said with a loud voice, "You gotta be kidding me, right?" Twilight looked confused. "But I thought that you wanted to tell me that you love me," and Spike gave her a troll face look and said, "With that purple thing I love, by that I meant my Game Boy Advance." After this incident, Spike was purported missing and his body was never found again. So anyways, now that Twilight Sparkle is forever alone, she wanted someone to live along with her. And since Twilight killed Spike for that Game Boy Advance joke earlier, she was living alone in this damn treehouse, which aged pretty badly, mostly because she used parts of her house as firewood. As she felt depressed and thought of committing suicide, some pony was ringing at her doorbell. What she didn't know, though, is that this some pony on the door will forever change her life. To be continued. Except it won't ever be because he never finished it. Yes? I'm pretty sure that it is both being recorded by that video camera there, as well as one in front of my face and one behind me. Oh, I guess the camera turned off there. All right, well, we got the one there for the con, so I'm sure once everything is uploaded and everything, they'll give you guys a link, because I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but yeah, you might want to talk to one of the con staff about that, and they can probably send you the link to the video for all this. So, all right, so we're going to move on to something a little bit less silly. As funny and as strange as that was, I am going to read you a story that I am going to simply let speak for itself. It is called 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 5. Twilight stared at the paper. That was all she had written. 2 plus 2 equals 5. Some part of it seemed wrong to her, seemed off, but Celestia had put it there, and that meant it was right. That meant it was true, because Celestia is right about everything, and that makes sense to a filly as young as Twilight. Celestia knew. She knew that 2 plus 2 make 5, and it was her job to teach Twilight that 2 plus 2 make 5. So that is what it was, and that is what Twilight knew now, too. 2 plus 2 equals 5. Twilight reassured herself on this in fragmented sentences and consoling phrases. She breathed. It's okay, she had told herself. Celestia is right. Celestia knows what's right. She took up her quill again with her magic and carefully dipped it in the ink. She breathed. She knew what to do next. It was simple. Celestia knew. 2 plus 2 equals 5. 2 minus 2 equals 2. 2 minus 5 equals negative 2. Negative 2 plus 5 equals 2. Negative 2 minus 2 equals negative 5. Negative 5 plus 2 equals negative 3. She quickly smudged out the 3. She wondered how she came up with such a silly answer like that, when she knew that it was 2. She had shook her head, casting out her silly little filly thoughts and dumb answers, and corrected her mistake. Negative 5 and 2 make negative 2. Celestia always said how smart Twilight was, how bright, that she would make a great mathematician. Twilight recalled this and blushed. Good thing Celestia is not here. Twilight didn't like failing the princess, mostly because every filly, at least that age, aims to please and searches for acceptance, something Twilight had never found before. 2 plus 2 equals 5. She had said it aloud, praying that it would convince her mind that it was true. She wasn't old enough or smart enough, not nearly to know any better, to even fathom her teacher was wrong, because the very idea of it, how silly. How could Celestia be wrong? Celestia knew. And Celestia had been so sure, had been so kind in explaining the simple fact to Twilight that it was not a mistake. For princesses don't make mistakes, and even if she had, she would have... Twilight stopped her train of thought. Stopped the silliness. Of course Celestia was right. She breathed again. She stared at the paper. Those were all the facts that she could think of. But then she started thinking. Her mind started turning in the most dangerous of ways. The numbers seemed to slowly float off the paper and swirl around Twilight, unlocking and moving about and making everything so clear. Twilight dipped her quill in the ink and began to write, adrenaline rushing through her veins. 2 times 2 equals 5. 2 divided by 2 equals 2. 2 times negative 2 equals negative 5. Negative 5 divided by 2 equals negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 equals 5. 5 divided by negative 2 equals negative 2. Those were all of the facts, though her mind didn't stop. No, quite the opposite. It was inflated with the new feeling of discovery, of eureka, through her brain that hadn't learned that word yet. Her train of thought traveled back into her memory, speeding past her questions. A number times itself. 2 to the power of 2 equals 5. Root 5 equals 2. She let her quill drop, sat back in her chair, and smiled. A strange sort of smugness crept into her, and a dollop or eagerness. How pleased Celestia would be at the progress Twilight had made, just from the simple fact that 2 and 2 make 5. How thrilled at her memory of squares and square roots she'd be. How impressed. And maybe a small idea would be planted in Celestia's mind, like a seed that would someday grow into the prettiest flower, prettier than all of Twilight's dresses would be after being crowned Princess of Smartness. She'd work on the title. Twilight's right brain happily slipped into this fantasy, the left side perfectly content with its job well done. She imagined banquets and suitors and book signings with big banners that said 2 plus 2 equals 5. Twilight Sparkle proves how smart she is. Twilight sat up, surprised by her own voice. 2 plus 2 equals 5, she repeated, uneasiness creeping back from where it lay dormant. Her eyes fell on her paper, on the 8 equations, facts, and truth she had written. She tried slipping back into the warmth of satisfaction, but it had already faded, banished into the doldrums of self-doubt. She attempted to pick her quill back up, but her magic couldn't get a strong enough hold of it. Twilight breathed and concentrated. The quill returned to the table, bathed in her pink aura. It's so simple. Just a fact. Magic doesn't make sense either, does it? The quill clattered to the ground, rattling Twilight's mind. Her hooves instinctively went to her ears, but that didn't stop the ringing. 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 + 2. Make it stop! She had yelled, far too loud for such a shy filly. She couldn't hear the clatter of hooves over the cacophony of twos. Twilight? Twilight, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. The door swung open, suddenly yellow. You don't sound fine. Princess? Yes. What does 2 and 2 make? 5, darling. Don't be silly. Oh, okay, thank you. Perhaps you should get some sleep. Yeah, probably. Good night, my faithful student. Good night, Princess. Sweet dreams, with Luna's blessing. The door shut again. They could both sense each other's uneasiness, yet neither did anything about it. Celestia's right. I should get some sleep. Celestia's right. The phrase echoed in her brain. She realized the twos had stopped. It had echoed again. Celestia's right. Celestia knows. Celestia's true. The phrases were pulled into her consciousness for the millionth time, swirling and mixing into a pile of strange emotions. And Twilight prayed. She prayed to beings of a hallway over. She prayed for peace. She prayed that the numbers would simply jump off the page and tell Twilight what was right. No, that's what she had Celestia for. 2 + 2 = 5. 2 and 2 make 5. Makes you think. Actually, if you look it up online, 2 and 2 make fish. It is. Look it up. It's true. So, keeping with tradition, because it looks like we have a little, about 20 minutes or so we might be able to get through these last two, plus a possible special one at the end if we have enough time. So we're going to read another one, which is along the lines of the last one. Not quite random and silly, but still with one of those, what the hell is going on kind of a feeling. And an ending which is really well executed in my opinion, but at the same time, the whole lead up to it is a little questionable. But I'll let you guys decide that. So the story is, come out and play. Twilight! Twilight! Rainbow Dash called through the door of Twilight's home as she had knocked excitedly. She had ran here as fast as she could. She couldn't wait to tell her the news. Twilight, you'll never guess what happened today. Zecora came to town, and I was the first pony to see her at the edge of Everfree Forest. And as soon as she had seen me, she came right up to me and gave me a kiss. Dash was giddy with excitement. Her first kiss. She wanted to tell her friends about it. Twilight, are you in there? Twilight Sparkle came to the door to see what all the noise was about. She had opened the door and saw Rainbow Dash. Before Rainbow Dash could say anything, Twilight slammed the door shut. Well, that was rude, Dash said to herself. Hey, Twilight, what gives? She said. She heard nothing from inside. Dash tried to open the door. She had only gotten it open an inch before the door became aglow with purple aura, pushing it closed with a strong shove. Dash tried the knob again to only find that it had now been locked. Rainbow Dash walked over to the window to see what was up, but Twilight had already drawn the curtains. I'll go get Pinkie Pie, Dash decided. Whatever is wrong with Twilight, she'll be able to help improve her mood. Rainbow Dash returned some time later, this time with Pinkie Pie alongside her. She's being weird, Dash said to Pinkie. She hasn't left her house all day, and when I came to see her, she slammed the door in my face. Well, that doesn't sound like Twilight, Pinkie said. Maybe she's just grumpy. I'll cheer her up. I'd love to see my friend smile. She got to the Twilight's door and tried the knob. Just as Rainbow Dash had told her, the door was still locked. Twilight, are you in there? She had called through the door. There was no answer. But she thought she saw some movement through the blinds of the window. She walked over and tried to look through, but she couldn't see anything. She had knocked on the window. Twilight, are you being grumpy? It's okay if you are, but you should apologize to Rainbow Dash for slamming the door in her face. She's your friend, and it isn't very nice. She knocked harder, perhaps a little too hard. Her hoof broke the glass pane as it shattered and fell to the ground. Oops, sorry, Pinkie said. but not one to waste an opportunity. She reached through to try to push the blinds aside, but before she could see anything, a table came flying at her. She stumbled backwards away from the window sill as the blinds were pressed against the frame of the window by the tabletop. A moment later, she heard a hammering from inside. Nails jutted out from the wall around the window frame, locking the table in place. When the noise stopped, Pinky tried beating against the table, but it wouldn't budge. She must really hate a draft, Dash said behind Pinky. Pinky turned to her scion friend. I can't deal with Twilight when she's using her magic like this, she said. What we need is another unicorn who can understand her freaky magic fits, Dash suggested. I know what to do, said Pinky. We'll go get Rarity. Now really, you two, I think you're just overreacting, Rarity said as she had escorted her friends back to Twilight's house. It can't possibly be as bad as you're saying it is. When the trio arrived outside her home, the other ground floor window had been boarded up from the inside as well. Oh, it's worse. Rarity went up to the door and tried to reason with her lavender friend, presumably somewhere inside. Twilight, dear, are you in there? Rarity asked in a polite tone. Twilight, it's us, your friends. Whatever is wrong, dear? You could tell us. There was no response. Rarity turned to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow, darling, tell me exactly what happened. Dash ran her hoof through her mane, thinking carefully about the details of what had happened. Well, I came over here after seeing Zecora, Dash explained, and I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, she slammed it in my face. And then, she asked, and then I went to go and get Pinkie Pie to help, and then when we came to get you, Dash said. Rarity thought for a moment. Rainbow, dear, you were the last pony to see Twilight. How does she look? Was she all right? Was she sick or hurt? Rarity asked. She looked pretty upset when I saw her. Was she upset with you? Rarity asked. Rainbow Dash, did you prank our friend Twilight? No, Dash said defensively. I mean, not recently, she amended. And definitely nothing bad enough to cause her to act like this. Well, just the same, why don't you go over there, behind that building, and we'll see if we can't see what it is, Rarity said. Dash gave her a bit of a defensive glare, but she was willing to try anything to try and get Twilight to open the door and talk to them. She trotted away behind a nearby house, out of sight of the tree. Twilight, dear, Rarity said again, knocking on the door. Rainbow Dash is gone. She's left. It's just me and Pinkie Pie. You can talk to us now. Tell us what's wrong. Did Dashy do something to upset you? She listened intensely for a response. Nothing. She tried turning the knob. Don't bother, Pinkie said. She's locked it. Rarity pulled a hairpin from her mane. A lady is always prepared. She said with a smirk. She began to pick the lock. I don't like breaking into her home like this, she said. I respect Twilight's privacy, and I promise that we'll give her as much time as she needs once we find out what's wrong. Pinkie nodded in agreement. After a moment, the lock popped undone. Rarity pushed the door, but it wouldn't budge. I think something is blocking it from the inside, she said to Pinkie. She waved to Rainbow Dash, beckoning her to rejoin them. She's not upset with you specifically, Rarity said to Dash, but I still don't know what's wrong with her. Well, we're obviously not going to be able to get in. We'll have to try to get her to come out, Dash suggested. I know. We'll throw a party, said Pinkie. That's your answer for everything, said Dash. Yeah, but hear me out. I'll go around town and get every pony I can for a block party. We'll have it right here outside of her house. Then we'll dance and sing. She'll want to come outside and join the party. Or tell us to leave her alone in peace, said Rarity. Rarity's right, Dash said. Twilight hates noise. She'll come out and tell us all to be quiet, and then we can find out what's wrong with her. Either way, it should work. All right, I'll go and get every pony I can, Pinkie said, taking off into town. Before long, the grounds around the Golden Oak Library were filled with citizens of Ponyville, eager to participate in the impromptu block party hosted by Ponyville's premier party pony. As the sun set, the party was in full swing. Almost every pony in town was in attendance. Rainbow Dash had even talked Fluttershy into going. The shy Pegasus usually wasn't one for parties, but she wanted to help to do what she could for her friend Twilight. Rarity returned from her trip to Sweet Apple Acres. Applejack strode alongside her, happy to join in on the shindig. Rarity had explained the situation on the way back. Applejack walked up to the door and shouted over the noise of the crowd. Hey, Sugar Cube, are you going to join the party or what? Applejack asked. Your friends are all here, and we're just dying to get the guest of honor to join. Oh, speaking of which, Twilight, I got your letter, Celestia has said, having waded her way through the crowd. Your letter was asking for help, so I came as fast as I could. As soon as I arrived in Ponyville, your friends all came and gave me a big hug. They're so worried about you. They wanted me to come and see what was wrong. Still, no response from inside. This calls for extreme measures, Pinkie Pie style, Pinkie said. Every pony watched as she had climbed up the side of Twilight's house and kicked the window in. She started to climb inside when a blast of purple magic shot out at her, hitting her square in the chest and sending her tumbling to the ground in a crumpled heap. Oh, my stars! Rarity cried in harder. That tears it, Applejack yelled. Out of my way! She turned her back to the door and reared up, ready to buck it harder than any tree she had bucked before. With a solid kick, the door blew open in splinters, and every pony rushed inside to confront Twilight. She had a lot to answer for. Twilight ran up the stairs as they chased after her, the purple unicorn looking down at the ponies running up towards her. She had heard them from outside all day and into the night, and the doors and windows trying to get in. There were too many for her to fight them all. She had watched as the ponies that were once her friends came after her. First, it was Rainbow Dash. Then Pinkie, then every pony. Even Princess Celestia was after her now. A single tear rolled down her cheek as the horde of zombie ponies poured into her home to take her too. I know this is cliche, but I've got to say, what a twist! So yeah, that was probably the most structurally well-made of the stories that I had chosen, and like I said, the ending was pretty much fantastic because it came right out of nowhere. I'm not usually one for zombie stories, but I have to admit that one is definitely one of the best. So we've got ourselves about 15 minutes left, which should be more than enough time to finish up this last story, possibly another one. I'm not sure. I'm not quite positive how fast the other panelists are going to try to come in here and boot me out. But we are going to finish off with something that I think is most appropriate. A story that has a few parts, but they're all quite short, so we should be able to get through it no problem. It is called Scootaloo and Celestia, Adventures in Twilight's Gallbladder. Chapter 1, Scootaloo marries Celestia inside a giant Twilight Sparkle. This... Prepare yourselves. Everyone loved Princess Celestia. Everyone, that is, except Wendigos. Some teenage dragons, new Lunar Republic supporters, bats, and other nocturnal creatures. Let's start again. Almost everyone loved Princess Celestia. Even King Sombra, maybe. Some ponies loved her more than most. Scootaloo was one of those ponies. She loved Princess Celestia more than she had loved the sun. Okay, as much as she had loved the sun. She loved Princess Celestia enough to marry her. Of course, lots of ponies wanted to marry Celestia. However, Scootaloo had an edge. She asked. Imagine trying to ask the prettiest, most popular girl in school out on a date. It's hard to do without coming off sounding like a drooling moron. Now, imagine that same girl is also a princess, thousands of years old, and controls the sun. Now, that's a daunting prospect. As a result, most ponies simply pined for her love, but had never done anything about it, except try to be around her on the off chance that she would suddenly propose marriage to them, a tactic which never worked. Princess Celestia was flattered that Scootaloo asked, and since she hadn't married in many a century, so long, in fact, that she could no longer remember why most marriages end in divorce, and said yes. The two young lovers, well, young in a geological sense, decided to elope. This was an important decision, but since the Pony News Network had recently invented Pony Parazzi, it was the only logical choice. Twilight Sparkle, who had been growing like crazy ever since ascending, agreed to help the pair, offering to fly them off to a faraway land. But Celestia didn't want to leave Canterlot behind, especially on the off chance that this royal wedding was also interrupted with holy changelings. So the two of them, Princess Celestia and Scootaloo, took a potion that which had been prepared by the evil zebra shaman Zecora, a tincture of poison joke. Not just any poison joke, but pony shrinking poison joke. The same kind which Applejack had once inadvertently run afoul. Different poison joke plants have different effects, and this was known to zebra shamans. Once they were suitably de-biggened, they proceeded to hide inside of giant Twilight Sparkle, trademark, where it was safe from the prying eyes of Pony Parasi and from the changeling hordes. No, I'm not going to tell you how they got inside. The wedding itself went off without a hitch. Princess Celestia wore her finest yoke, boots, and tiara, while Scootaloo had to make do with a cardboard box she had found in a dumpster. Princess Celestia married them because she's a princess, and princesses can totally marry couples, even if they're half of the couple. Then came the honeymoon. It was magical, even if it was inside Twilight. Really, what could be more magical than the physical embodiment of the sun and a Pegasus enjoying their first night together while inside a giant lavender alicorn? You can't get any more magical than that. In fact, it was so comfortable inside of Twilight, they decided to stay there, building a little home in an unused section of her appendix. Some ponies may have found it uncomfortable living inside of another pony, but they were in love, and such things were the price to pay for love. Chapter 2. Yes, there's more. I didn't think so either, but there's more. Oh, and we are having slight technical difficulties. Trying to fix. Oh, you don't think I do? I'm the one reading this story, and I'm excited. I can't even talk anymore. That's how excited I am. Just don't buy a Kinect. That's how they watch you. So, you know what? I'm seeing that the hotel's internet has decided it just wanted to stop working. I might need a phone if I could possibly continue this. Everyone's so excited to see how the story ends that they are throwing their cellular devices. What do you need? FanFiction.com. You know what? I don't even have a response for that. That's really good. You know what? Yeah. It's probably going to take me too long to find out where the rest of the story goes anyways. Yeah, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, the overlords of Hasbro have decided that my panel has gone on a little bit too long, so unfortunately we are going to have to end it on a slight negative note. Like a slow balloon emptying its air. Yes, as a consolation for the panel ending early and not being able to finish the story, everyone gets a free hour in the ball pit. Please find Silver and tell him I said that. I want to know if he gets freaked out. Yes, there is a ball pit. Ask every staff member if they have one. So I want to thank you guys all for coming. That's the panel. So we're going to pretty much set things up for the next guys. So hope you guys enjoy the rest of the convention. Thank you. Also, Thrackerzod thanks you for coming.